The first time I saw the new apartment, I didn't recognize it as mine. Not because it was small. Not because it wasn't finished. But because someone else had already lived inside it, before I ever stepped in. My name is Denise Carter. I'm 45 years old. And 2 weeks before I moved into what was supposed to be my new home with my husband Ethan, his mother had already decided what my life should look like. I still remember the moment I opened the door. The smell of fresh paint mixed with something heavier, perfume that didn't belong to me. Soft beige curtains already hung in the living room. A massive velvet sofa in dusty rows stood exactly in the center like it had been placed for a photo shoot. I froze. "This isn't what we chose," I whispered. Behind me, Margot smiled. My mother-in-law. Warm cardigan. Gentle voice. That calm expression people trust too quickly. "Oh, darling," she said softly, touching my arm like she was comforting me. "I knew you'd be overwhelmed, so I helped a little." A little. That word didn't fit what I was seeing. Ethan was standing near the window, avoiding my eyes. That was the first moment something inside me shifted. Because I realized this wasn't just decoration. It was occupation. And I hadn't even moved in yet. I told myself it was just nerves. That moving is stressful. That emotions run high. That Margot was simply trying to support us. That's what Ethan kept saying too. "She just has good taste." He laughed once when I mentioned the furniture. "You should be happy she cares." Cares. That word started to irritate me in a way I couldn't explain. Because Margot's care always came with decisions already made. Not suggestions. Not opinions. Decisions. Over the next few days, I noticed small things. The kitchen layout was already reorganized. My planned workspace in the corner was turned into a decorative reading nook. Even the lighting choices, warm, soft, cozy, were exactly what Margot liked in her own house. Not mine. When I finally asked Ethan directly, he shrugged. "It's just temporary styling. Mum wanted it to feel welcoming." Temporary. But nothing about it felt temporary. Especially not the way Margot started visiting the apartment every other day. Sometimes she brought food. Sometimes she brought flowers. Sometimes she brought ideas. "I think the dining table should face the window," she said one afternoon, already measuring the space with her eyes. "That's not what we planned," I replied carefully. Her smile didn't change. "Oh, planning is flexible, dear. You'll learn that once you have a real family home." A real family home. Something in that sentence landed wrong. Because it sounded like I wasn't already part of one. And Ethan just stayed silent again. That silence was becoming familiar. And dangerous. It didn't happen all at once. That's the thing I didn't understand at first. Margot didn't take over my life loudly. She edited it. Quietly. Carefully. Like someone adjusting a painting by millimeters every day until you can't remember what it originally looked like. One afternoon, I came home earlier than planned. Margot was already inside. She had keys. I hadn't even asked Ethan about that. She was in the kitchen, rearranging my plates. Not washing dishes. Not helping. Rearranging. "I thought this would be more practical," she said brightly when she saw me. "You always seem a bit overwhelmed with organization." I stared at her hands moving through my cabinets like she belonged there. "I can organize my own kitchen," I said slowly. She laughed softly. Oh, of course you can, dear. I'm just making it easier for you. You work so hard. I don't want you exhausted before you even start your married life properly. Married life properly. There it was again. As if I was still being trained for something I was already living. That evening, I mentioned it to Ethan. She changed everything in the kitchen. He didn't look up from his phone. Mom just likes things neat. She has keys, Ethan. That made him pause. Just for a second. Then he sighed. I gave her a spare. In case of emergencies. Emergencies. Like what? A dirty spoon? A wrong plate? But I didn't say it. Because I already knew what would happen if I pushed too hard. Nothing would explode. Everything would just shift slightly away from me again. The first real crack didn't come from Margot. It came from me noticing what she was doing through Ethan. We were choosing a sofa for the living room. Finally, something that was supposed to be ours. I had picked something simple. Neutral. Clean lines. Ethan liked it too. At least, he said he did. But 2 days later, Margot arrived with a catalogue. I found something much more suitable, she said, placing it on the table like a gift. I looked at it. Velvet. Heavy design. Exactly like the one already accidentally placed in the apartment. I think we already decided, I said carefully. Margot tilted her head. Oh darling, you chose. Yes. But you didn't really see the space yet. There it was. That tone. Soft. Patient. Like I was a child misunderstanding the world. Ethan flipped through the catalogue. She has a point, he said casually. My chest tightened. We already agreed. He sighed. It's just furniture, Denise. Why are you making it complicated? Complicated. Another word that kept appearing every time I disagreed. As if disagreement itself was the problem. Margot touched Ethan's arm gently. You know, I just want you both to feel at home, she said softly. Then she looked at me. And Denise, I know change is hard for some people. But you'll adjust. You're family now. Family. The word landed differently every time she said it. Because it never included boundaries. Only expectations. That night, I stood alone in the half-finished apartment. Surrounded by furniture I didn't fully choose. And for the first time, I started to wonder if I was building a home. Or stepping into someone else's version of one. The first time I actually said no, everything changed. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No slammed doors. Just a simple moment in the kitchen. Margot had brought over new suggestions again. Curtains this time. Thick, patterned ones in a warm golden tone. They make the space feel more welcoming, she said, already holding them up against the window. I watched her carefully. And something in me finally stopped bending. I don't want those, I said. Just that. Simple. Clear. For a second, she didn't respond. Then she smiled. That same soft smile. Oh Denise, she said gently, you don't have to decide right away. You're probably just tired. That word again. Tired. As if my disagreement was a symptom. Not a choice. I'm not tired, I replied. Ethan walked in right at that moment. Perfect timing. As always. What's going on? He asked. Margot turned slightly toward him, instantly shifting tone. She just doesn't feel comfortable yet making decorating decisions. It's normal in new environments. I stared at her. She didn't even look at me when she said it. Ethan exhaled. Mom, maybe just let it go for now. Let it go. It was never let's decide together. It was always let it go. Like my opinion was something heavy that needed to be dropped. Margot gently placed the curtains on the counter. I only want what's best for both of you, she said softly. I see things you might not notice yet. And then she added, almost like an afterthought. You'll understand once you're more settled into being a wife in a proper home. Something inside me snapped, not loudly, but permanently. Because I realized something very simple. She wasn't helping me choose a home. She was teaching Ethan that I wasn't ready to have one. After that, things changed, but not in the way I expected. Margot didn't argue with me anymore. She didn't need to. She simply stopped asking. And started deciding. I began noticing surprises in the apartment. A coffee machine I never chose. A hallway mirror I never approved. A set of expensive kitchen chairs delivered while I was at work. When I asked Ethan, he looked genuinely confused. Mom just wanted to help with finishing touches, he said. Finishing touches. As if the entire apartment was already complete, without me. One evening, I came home and found Margot inside again. She was talking to a delivery worker, signing something. I saw the word installation on the document. What is this? I asked immediately. Margot turned slowly, smiling as if I had walked into a pleasant surprise party. Oh, just the lighting adjustment, she said lightly. The apartment was a bit too harsh. I fixed it. I didn't ask for that, I said. She tilted her head. You didn't have to, dear. I noticed it needed improvement. Improvement. Not discussion. Not permission. Improvement. Ethan arrived minutes later. And instead of questioning it, he looked around and nodded. It actually looks better, he admitted. That was the moment I felt something quietly shift inside me. Because I wasn't being overruled. I was being edited in real time. My preferences didn't even get to exist long enough to be rejected. They were simply replaced before they could matter. Later that night, I finally said what I had been avoiding. This is my home too, I told Ethan. He looked at me strangely. Of course it is. But his tone didn't match his words. And from the hallway, Margot's voice floated in softly. I just want you to feel comfortable, Denise. I'm helping you settle in properly. Settle in properly. Like I hadn't already moved my life into this space. Like I was still a guest being guided into behavior. And for the first time, I wondered something I hadn't allowed myself to think before. Was I living in my home or adapting to someone else's version of it? The next escalation wasn't loud. It was humiliatingly practical. I came home one afternoon and found a moving crew in the living room. Boxes everywhere. Labels already written in neat handwriting. Not mine. Margot was standing in the center like she was supervising a project. Perfect timing, she said when she saw me. We're optimizing storage before everything gets too messy. I froze. Optimizing? I repeated. She smiled gently. You were going to struggle with space anyway. I just organized it for efficiency. I looked around. My things were already packed. Not randomly. Systematically. My things? I asked slowly. Ethan appeared from the hallway. He looked uncomfortable, but not surprised. That's just temporary, he said quickly. Mum thought it would be easier if everything was arranged before you fully settle. Before I fully settle. As if I hadn't already been living there. As if my presence was still conditional. I walked to one of the boxes. My clothes. Folded. Sorted. Moved. Without me. This is not okay, I said quietly. Margot placed a hand over her chest, almost offended. Oh Denise, I would never do anything harmful. I'm helping you reduce stress. You always seem overwhelmed when you have too many decisions. Overwhelmed. There it was again. A label. Not a feeling. A classification. Ethan sighed. Can we not turn everything into a conflict? Mom is just trying to make things smoother. Smoother. For who? Because nothing about this felt smooth to me. I turned to Margot. You moved my belongings without asking. She smiled softly. I improved the system. Improved. That word again. And in that moment, I realized something cold and clear. She wasn't acting like a guest in my life. She was acting like the manager of it. And Ethan was already used to it. That night, I couldn't stay in the apartment. The walls felt reorganized too. Like even the air had been arranged without my permission. I went for a drive just to breathe without being optimized. But Margot's voice kept replaying in my head. I improved the system. Improved. As if I was part of the system. Not a person inside a home. A problem inside a layout. When I returned, the lights were on. Margot was in the kitchen again. Of course she was. She turned slowly when she heard me. Oh dear, I was just making tea, she said softly. You looked stressed earlier. I don't want you in my home when I'm not here, I said clearly. For a second, the smile didn't move. Then it returned. Even softer. Oh Denise, it's Ethan's home too. I'm just helping him take care of it. That sentence landed differently. Because it quietly removed me again. Not owner. Not equal. Just one side of a shared equation. Ethan walked in behind me. Mom, can you just relax a bit? He asked tiredly. I turned to him. Do you think this is normal? He sighed. It's just Mom being Mom. She's trying to help. Help. Always help. Never control. Never interference. Never boundary violation. I pointed toward the living room. My things were packed without asking me. Ethan rubbed his forehead. I told you, it's temporary organization. Then Margot added gently from behind him. You're very sensitive about structure, Denise. That's why changes feel bigger to you than they are. Sensitive. There it was. Another label. Another soft dismissal disguised as care. I looked at both of them. And for the first time, I didn't feel confused. I felt positioned. Placed into a role I never agreed to. The difficult one. The overwhelmed one. The emotional one. While she remained the calm center of everything. And Ethan stayed in the middle. Never choosing. Just adjusting. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning. I woke up to silence. Too clean. Too intentional. And when I walked into the living room, I understood why. The entire space had been rearranged again. But this time, it wasn't just furniture. It was identity. My photos were gone from the shelves. Replaced with abstract art Margot liked. My books were moved into a closed cabinet. Out of sight. Out of presence. And in the center of the room, a framed interior concept plan. Like it was a showroom. Not a home. I stood there frozen. Then Margot appeared behind me. "Oh, I see you noticed," she said warmly. "I didn't approve any of this," I said slowly. She tilted her head. "Approve is such a strong word, Denise. It sounds so confrontational." Ethan walked in. He looked at the room. And smiled slightly. "I actually like it," he said. That sentence. So simple. So final. Something inside me went completely still. "You removed my personal things," I said. Margot stepped closer, voice soft. "I made the space more cohesive. You had too many conflicting visual elements. It was affecting the flow. Conflicting. As if my life was a design flaw." I turned to Ethan. "Do you hear yourself right now?" He frowned. "Why are you reacting like this?" "It's just furniture and decor." Just. That word again. Just. As if everything I felt was always too much for what was actually happening. I walked toward the shelf where my photos used to be. Empty now. And I finally said it out loud. "You are erasing me from my own home." Silence. No denial. No correction. Just Margot's soft voice behind me. "Oh, Denise, you're still here. You're just resisting harmony." And that was the moment I realized something terrifying. This wasn't about decoration anymore. It was about replacement. Something inside me stopped reacting. Not because I accepted it, but because I finally understood the pattern. Every complaint I made became sensitivity. Every boundary I set became conflict. Every no turned into something that needed to be softened, reinterpreted, or ignored. So I changed my approach. I stopped arguing. And started observing. That evening, I sat quietly in the kitchen while Margot prepared dinner again. She moved through the space like she owned the rhythm of it. Ethan was on his phone. As always. I finally asked one simple question. "Who decided to move my photos?" Margot didn't even pause. "I did," she said calmly. "They disrupted the emotional balance of the room." Emotional balance. As if my memories were a design flaw. "And you agreed?" I asked Ethan. He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything before he even spoke. "I didn't think it was a big deal," he said finally. Not I agreed. Not I supported it. Just distance. Just avoidance. Margot placed plates on the table with soft precision. "You're looking at this in a very personal way, Denise," she said gently. "But homes are shared spaces. Adjustments are normal. Shared. But only when I adjusted. Never when I resisted. I looked at both of them. And something shifted again. Not emotion this time. Clarity. Because I realized I wasn't fighting decoration. I was fighting a system where every decision already had a default winner. And it wasn't me. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I simply opened my phone and started taking photos. Every changed corner. Every removed object. Every improvement. Margot noticed. Why are you doing that? She asked lightly. I looked at her. And for the first time, I answered without hesitation. Because I need proof of what you call help. The smile on her face didn't disappear. But it changed. Just slightly. Like something underneath it finally felt seen. The next morning, Ethan didn't go to work. That alone felt unusual. He was standing in the kitchen when I walked in, looking at something on his phone with a tight expression. Margot was already there too. Of course she was. I noticed immediately. Her presence felt heavier than usual. Like she wasn't just visiting anymore. She was waiting. Denise, Ethan said without looking up, we need to talk. Margot didn't move. Didn't interrupt. Just watched. That alone made my stomach tighten. I've been thinking, he continued, maybe you're not adjusting well to shared living. Shared living. As if I had moved into someone else's apartment. Not our home. I'm not adjusting. I repeated slowly. He finally looked at me. And there it was. Fatigue. Framed as logic. You've been tense since we moved in, he said. Mom is just trying to help, but you keep turning everything into a problem. I almost laughed. Because it sounded rehearsed. Not like his words. Like something repeated enough times to become truth. Margot stepped in gently. I think what Ethan is trying to say is that you feel out of control in environments you can't fully manage. There it was again. The translation. My feelings, rewritten into a diagnosis. I'm not out of control, I said quietly. Margot tilted her head. Denise, you photographed the apartment like evidence. Ethan exhaled. Exactly. That word hit harder than I expected. Exactly. Like I had already been judged. I looked at both of them. And suddenly I understood something deeper than anger. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was alignment. They had already agreed on the version of me that was easiest to manage. The emotional one. The sensitive one. The unstable one. And once that version was established, everything I said would only confirm it. I stepped back slowly. Not because I was losing. Because I was finally seeing the structure clearly. And structures don't change when you argue with them. They change when you step outside them. That afternoon, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I didn't explain myself again. I simply walked into the apartment with a small suitcase. Ethan looked up first. What is that? He asked immediately. I didn't answer right away. I placed my phone on the table and opened the folder I had been building for days. Photos. Notes. Dates. Before and after changes. Messages. Everything Margot called help. I'm documenting the changes made to my living space without consent, I said calmly. Margot let out a soft breath, almost like a disappointed smile. Oh, Denise, this again. Again. Like my reality was a recurring inconvenience. Ethan stepped forward. You're really doing this? Legalizing furniture? I looked at him. No, I said quietly. I'm documenting boundary violations. Silence. For the first time, no one immediately reframed my words. I continued. I gave this space trust, not permission for takeover. Margot folded her hands gently. You're making this sound dramatic, she said softly. We were improving your home life. That sentence almost made me laugh. Improving. Like I was a project. Not a person. I turned to Ethan. I want separation of living arrangements, I said. His face changed slightly. Denise, don't escalate this. Escalate. As if I had started something. Not reacted to it. I'm not escalating, I replied. I'm exiting. That word hung in the air differently. Margot finally spoke, softer than before. You'll regret destroying harmony over misunderstandings. I looked at her directly. For the first time without hesitation. This wasn't harmony, I said. It was control with good lighting. Then I picked up my suitcase. And walked out. No dramatic music. No final argument. Just the sound of a door closing behind me, that finally felt like mine. The first week after leaving felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful at first, just unfamiliar. Like my life had lost background noise I didn't realize I was constantly translating. No Margot correcting the tone of my decisions. No Ethan explaining why my feelings were overreactions. Just silence that belonged entirely to me. I stayed in a small rented apartment across town. Simple furniture. No improvements. No optimizations. Just space that didn't argue with my existence. On the third day, Ethan called. I didn't answer immediately. Then I did. His voice was different. Less confident. Less rehearsed. Denise, Mom thinks you misunderstood everything. I closed my eyes for a moment. Even now. Still Mom thinks. Not we realized. Not we were wrong. Just continuation of the same system. I didn't misunderstand anything, I said calmly. A pause. Longer than usual. She was trying to help, he added, quieter. That word again. Help. I looked around my empty table. And something inside me finally settled. She helped herself into my life, I said. Silence. This time, he didn't respond immediately. Then, softer. I didn't see it like that. And that was the truth that hurt the most. Not cruelty. Not manipulation. But blindness that only worked in one direction. I know, I said quietly. Another pause. Then I added. But I do now. After that, there were no more calls that changed anything. Only messages that slowly stopped coming. Weeks passed. And for the first time in a long time, I began rebuilding something that didn't need permission. My space. My routines. My silence. One evening, I sat by the window of my new apartment and realized something simple. I wasn't trying to reclaim a home anymore. I was learning how to exist without being redesigned. And that felt like the first real beginning I had in years. Not perfect. Not shared. Just mine.